With the victory of Donald Trump achieved, the American right must ask ourselves, what is next? So in this video, we're actually going to lay out a roadmap for the future of the American right, the American conservative, America First movement, and we're going to try to articulate some of the challenges we're going to face in the coming future, both cultural and political, and find ways to develop a positive agenda for the future that will articulate the conservative vision for the next few decades into posterity. But before we get into that, my friends, hope all of you are doing well. I'm Christian Watt. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy a political and social commentary with a philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can to help us get this channel successful. My friends, we are close to 20,000 subscribers. I'm so excited. I know I say that every video, but I'm very excited. I believe our message is dynamite. It is resonant. I believe that it is what is needed right now because we live in a drought of edification and rich thought. And we live in a place where there is a bountiful supply of mediocre thinking. And so my hope is that we can provide people with just, even if you disagree with me, some food for thought that'll help motivate you to think a little bit deeper about our politics, about our society, and about the future of this country. So if that sounds good to you, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can. Now, everyone, please enjoy the video. So, the victory of Trump has been met by raucous reactions from both sides of the aisle. It's been met from praise and many other kinds of emotional reactions on the right. It's been met with dismay and shrieking on the left. There's been several legislative reactions that we're going to get into a little bit later in the video. But amidst these reactions, I have noticed a phenomenon on the right that I want to address immediately before I get into articulating a positive agenda for the future, a positive conservative agenda, because we can't articulate a positive conservative agenda if we are focused on annihilating our enemies and watching them wail and scream and mocking them in their despair. I can already see some of you unsubscribing from me just from me saying this. I can already see the hate comments. I would urge you, please, just hear me out. I understand this is a volatile time. I understand this is a time where many people feel vindicated, and that's great. You should feel vindicated. But this is also a time where wisdom and reason must prevail. We live in a very volatile country right now, my friends. Half of the country is wrongly convinced that a dictatorship is on the horizon. And because of that, some people who are already troubled, who have significant mental health issues, are contemplating suicidal ideation due to Donald Trump winning the White House. I would encourage everybody who is sitting on their computer screens, looking at people melt down or saying that the salt mines are flowing and it's so glorious to see meltdowns, I would encourage all of you not to revel in the emotional distress of your fellow man, but instead to seek out a way to build a bridge, to build a coalition, and to build understanding with those who you may disagree with. Because ultimately, if we begin reducing people to their political values, if we begin reducing people to the erroneous ideas they may have, then we have fundamentally lost our sense of humanity. And if we've lost our sense of humanity, what else is there to conserve? Conservatism flows from a recognition of the truths of human nature and how they apply to society, amongst many other things. And so if we lose our humanity, you have no ground to stand on as a conservative or as an America First or whatever, with whoever you are within the right-leaning coalition who professes values that are affectionate towards the United States. We have a culture of antagonism that has been stoked by social media, and watching people melt down and laughing at it is a part of this culture of antagonism. We live in a culture that prizes dopamine hijacking as the primary mode of engagement and social interaction. So the idea of owning the libs or destroying the left are dominant behaviors, and these behaviors guide the minds of those who engage in political discourse, unfortunately. And these behaviors lead to not only a toxic political culture from which nothing fruitful can come, it also leads to a worse country. You must understand, my friends, those leftists you're laughing at, you have to share a country with them. You have to share a society with them. And if you're worried about us being divided, because I hear so much talk about people being divided, if you're worried about the problems of division in modern-day American society, which, by the way, division is not such a bad thing. Division actually is the source of meaning in the world, and we'll get into that later. But if you're worried about social division, and which can lead to unrest and a lack of cohesion and social breakdown, the last thing you should be doing is reveling when your supposed enemies are having a hard time. You should be reaching out. I'm not saying to unify, but I'm saying to reach out. I'm saying to build bonds. The panacea for American political issues will not be a person getting elected to the presidency. The panacea to America's political issues will not be the Republicans or whatever party controlling the House and the Senate. The panacea for America's social and political problems start in the community. They start in the society. They start with you. It's going to be the building of bonds of community and bridges with people, regardless of political affiliation, that actually strengthens our country and restores our republic. A culture focused on antagonism and beating the other side is not constructive. It'll simply facilitate the destruction of goodwill amongst people, the destruction of charitability amongst people, and make our country a worse place to live in. Trump's victory has given us a golden opportunity to really reconstruct everything that has been lost in the past 120 plus years of progressive social and political rule. But this moment should also compel us to reflect on our own behavior, on our own habits, and to embody the virtues that our founders knew this country needed: charitability, liberality, goodwill, affection towards your fellow man, and to be understanding towards other people. That is the way forward. Now, let me add an exception. Those who have pushed violence upon the American society for a very long time, violent ideologues, especially left-wing violent ideologues who are quite organized and have been trying to usurp the social order for a long time, deserve no sympathy. They must be treated with the utmost brunt of justice, and they must be stopped from harming society. But the Harris voter down the street who does not observe politics very much, or the blue-haired person on TikTok, they're not the violent ideologue. They may be confused, they may be mistaken, but they are not your enemy. They are someone who, again, may be confused or mistaken, but they're not someone who fundamentally wants to destroy society in a violent way. Therefore, you should still extend virtue towards them. But a society where we simply remain in our echo chambers and we mock and we antagonize and we factionalize and we are chomping at the bit to see the destruction of our fellow man is a recipe for disaster, no matter who the president has to be. So I just had to do that PSA because a lot of people are a lot of big influencers, I won't say names, but many of you know them, are on Twitter, on YouTube just saying, oh, we need to be rejoicing in this. No. Rejoicing in someone else's self-destruction is a malevolent act. I call it banal malevolence. And I had an argument with a friend about this, and he was insistent that it was not banal malevolence, that it actually is an okay thing, because it's just funny, it's just humor. When you're laughing, not at someone's expense with a mutual understanding, but when you're laughing at someone's mental demise, there is no humor in that. And if you find humor in that, I submit to you, you have something wrong with you. So that's that. Now, the argument that the left has hurt us for so long, they have done bad things to us, therefore, we must do bad things to them, makes a basic moral error. And that basic moral error is this: reciprocity is not the basis of moral behavior. It informs moral behavior, but it is not the basis of moral behavior. So, if you're going to say, for example, that someone stole from me, therefore I should steal from them, no, you've combined two immoral acts, and you've done nothing more but continue to perpetuate the very evil you complained about in the first place. The proper response to someone stealing from you is to get restitution and have the thing stolen returned back to you, and maybe have that person punished for stealing, not to commit more evil acts. The response to people that have mistreated you, that have harmed you, or that have tried to make bad assumptions about you is not to do the same thing to them. It is to reject their toxic behavior and replace it with virtuous behavior. Now, the reason I spent over 9 minutes talking about this in the video is because the solution, as I mentioned, to our problems is not going to be political. It's going to be social. The political will help us, will give us an environment conducive to a healthier society. But ultimately, it's up for us as Americans to embrace the spirit of our founding and take ownership over our own lives, over our own communities, and to forge ahead on that basis. Now, President Trump himself has a lot to worry about, I think, over these next 70 plus days as the posting of these videos. We've already had several state officials coming out declaring war on him. Governor of Massachusetts, for example, has said that they will defy federal immigration law. Gavin Newsom convened a special session within California to go to war against a future Trump administration. AOC has said that it is time for resistance. Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, has said that she will continue to go after Trump, and who knows what that actually means. But what I think we need to understand our roadmap is by dividing our roadmap into short-term problems and goals and long-term problems and goals. So the short-term problems that we're going to have are this. First of all, we're going to see a bunch of challenges to our constitutional order over the next 70 plus days. Between now and Inauguration Day, these challenges will come in many different forms. Number one, mobocracy. You will see mobs that go around cities which may begin as protests, but ultimately deteriorate into kinds of social unrest that seek to intimidate people and destroy things in order to provide some kind of heckler's veto to the legitimacy of a Trump administration. Now, this is going to be very difficult because he won by overwhelming margins, but in the eyes of people who may not care about that, in the eyes of people who are led primarily by passion, this may be a sign that America is going to crap. It's not very hard to convince somebody that the state of things is bad if you continue to flush them with negative content. They continue to see negative things in their everyday life. Even if the negative things they are seeing are not reflective of a broader state, people can catastrophize and generalize, which is part of the problems, by the way, that we have today in this society. This leads me to my second observation. Propaganda is going to continue to become a massive issue. We had Rachel Maddow, for example, saying that that Elon Musk, if Trump had won, should have lost his contract. We've had several people saying that Trump is a fascist. We have several people saying that Trump won because of racism and sexism and xenophobia. We've had several posts on social media basically saying that freedom is gone, ethics are gone. I've seen these posts, and that America itself is a lost country. We've had just the annals of communication flooded with so much destabilizing propaganda coming from the media, corporate media, going all the way down to the grassroots. And this is going to have a very negative impact on the ability of Americans to rationally discuss political issues. And that will have an even bigger impact on how Trump's successes as a president, because he will have some, are perceived. You see, it's not all about winning the race. It's about how your victory is perceived. If you won the race, good for you. But if you won the race and someone can say, well, he won the race at the expense of his contestant who had X amount of bad thing happen to them, and that person deserved it more than him, even though that statement is totally incorrect and wrong and born of envy, that will still move the minds of certain people. And that's what's going to be happening in between now and Inauguration Day, and even after Inauguration Day. There's going to be an attempt to destabilize and delegitimize the American constitutional process, to destabilize and legitimize Donald Trump's victory. And it's going to, I think, impact how a lot of people are seeing things as the holidays go on. We're going to see more governors, more attorney generals come out and issue challenges to Trump. This may be in terms of lawsuits. We may even see, for example, a challenge to the certification of the election. Even if it's not successful, the fact that this could potentially happen, even though both parties have conceded and agreed that this election was fine and there should be peaceful transition of power, just shows there are people who don't respect American constitutional republicanism and simply wish to wield power for their own gains, simply wish to wield power to impose their belief system upon the world. It's different if the election had irregularities and there were problems that need to be addressed, which is what happened in 2020. But if it's simply you not wanting to give up, and simply you believing that the person that you're running against or fighting against is somehow an evil person, then that becomes a troubling prospect for the preservation of that system. You're going to continue to see the narrative that Trump is a dictator and a fascist push in the minds of people, which will radicalize people, both mentally unwell people and maybe people that are mentally well, into taking drastic action. We've already seen a bevy of death threats directed towards the former and future president and several people on his team on social media. So this is going to be an onslaught. This is going to test the durability of our country. But we must be prepared for it, because if we can survive this bevy of social, political, institutional onslaught, then I think the durability of our constitutional republic will have been seen, and us as conservatives, us as America First people, will be effectively the guardians of the civilization, beating back the rabid barbarians. Now, that's the short-term prospects. What are our long-term prospects? What is President Trump going to face once he's officially in the White House? And what will conservatives, America Firsters, need to actually address? What issues will we need to address under Trump presidency? Several issues. The biggest of which, you're not seeing your favorite influencers talk about this. You're not seeing many people talk about this. The biggest of which is going to be the AI revolution, the rise of transhumanism, and other issues that are adjacent to this, issues within bioethics that are adjacent to this. Now, this is actually a very deep issue, because I'm going to get more philosophical here. The essence of a conservative is the recognition of certain truths about human nature and the building of society and the building of social foundations and moral foundations upon those truths. AI, and especially ideologies surrounding AI, transhumanism, has the potential to completely rework and usurp what it means to be a human by challenging essential elements of our existence, i.e. our mortality, by trying to extend our lifespans, i.e. Other kinds of things as well, i.e. modifying our faculties, modifying our reason with different digital implants to make us kind of super geniuses, things that just really defy the natural order. And so these things have a complete potential to overturn the paradigm that America was built upon, up on its head. And this is why I think we have to really, as conservatives, articulate a vision that supports digital progress, it supports progressing in technology, but does not support making technology a totalizing force upon all of society. The danger of transhumanism is that it wishes to overcome humanity by virtue of the gadgets that we've invented, by virtue of the sciences that we've cultivated. And this is actually, by the way, I think one of the things that is going to be a tension within the MAGA movement, because you got people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. I won't call them transhumanists, but both of whom have invested a lot of money into technological progress, who may very well want to introduce measures that may challenge the definition of what it means to be human. And a lot of conservatives, a lot of people within MAGA will view that as playing God. So we have to articulate a positive agenda relating to that. In my opinion, there has to be a complete and utter rejection of transhumanism, a complete and utter rejection of the deification of technology, and a willingness to rein in technological progress to serve society and not make society serve it. When a tool is an agent of you, that tool can be used in a way that is more grounded. When you become an agent of the tool, and this is especially literal in the case of AI and the developing of this kind of super consciousness that may be happening, this kind of singularity that may happen in the future, this mythical singularity, then that means you have lost your free will and it has been invested in something that is totally beyond you. Your interests are no longer being served. The interests of truth no longer being served. Reason no longer being served. What's being served is whatever amorphous thing is controlling you wants. So not only is technology a tool, a potential tool of control, which is the main objection that many people have, but it's also a potential tool of dehumanization on a mass scale. And conservatives must be the ones to defend humanity, and Trump must be the one to also defend humanity by reining in that progress, by not completely investing himself totally in it, in a way that allows these institutions to do whatever they wish. Remember, it was even agreed with by the top AI developers that there should be like a 6-month freeze on development of AI because of the radical implications it could have for our society. So we must look closely at that. Second, the idea of national sovereignty is going to be a very big point for conservatives going into this next few years. There is currently 2 wars and 1 Cold War that could potentially go hot any moment. Israel, Ukraine, and also Taiwan. The invocations and defenses of American involvement in all of these areas has to do with maintaining the current geopolitical world order. Boris Johnson said a few years ago of a Biden presidency, that Biden will defend the international rules-based order. Well, it's this international rules-based order that has done a lot to destabilize the world, funnily enough, and has done a lot as well to erode the sovereignty of American interest as it relates to how we interact with other countries. So in other words, it's not really, it's the only order it brings is the order imposed by the technocrats that happen to head the institutions that draft up these abstract ideas about how foreign policy should be conducted. Donald Trump is a threat to that order, which is one of the reasons why Yuval Harari said that the world order will be challenged significantly. It might end if Trump wins. This is why EU leaders are gathering right now, as I make this video, in Europe, trying to strategize how the future of their coalitions will survive. This is why there's now think pieces that's basically saying that the EU needs to rely more on itself and not on America. This is great for us. This is a great thing for us. But Trump must make the point to say that national sovereignty and national self-interest must be the guiding principle of any interaction that we have with the rest of the world. It cannot be what NATO wants. It cannot be what the Atlantic Council wants. It cannot be what Ukraine or any other nation wants. But in order for that to happen, there must be a strong groundswell, a strong understanding of why national sovereignty is so integral to the existence of a nation. That is why I advocate for people within the movement, again, talk more about this. Define what the nation is. The reason why national sovereignty is indispensable to a nation is because it is as essential to the lifeblood of a nation as a heart is to the life of the human being. Because every nation needs to have certain limits upon which it acts within, because a nation itself is simply the manifestation of limitations in a geographical area. A nation with no limits is not a nation because it cannot be confined to a particular kind of territory. National sovereignty simply says we are not some abstract idea or some abstract vessel that is just part of this amorphous blob that meets sometimes within the halls of international power. No, we are a concrete nation built upon ideas with people and a way of life that must be preserved, and that must be the guiding interest. Another thing that Trump can do on this front, Trump can redefine the nature of U.S. relationships with this principle by saying, yes, we have alliances, but we won't view the alliances themselves as values. One of the biggest problems that we've had in foreign policy over the past few decades is viewing alliances themselves as values. Look at, for example, the ever so oftentimes talked about United States-UK special relationship. Now, I did a video on this a few days ago, but to recap, the special relationship between the US and the UK is somehow this indispensable partnership that helps keep the world functioning orderly. This is what Boris Johnson said. George Bush, he said the special relationship is the rock upon which dictatorships fall. In reality, this special relationship is simply a way for Britain and the UK, and particularly the alliances it's a part of, to assert domination over the world. It's simply what it is. To be a moralizing policeman in the world. Not only that, but we've also seen, in regards to the special relationship, that it's a way to maintain the balance of power in certain organizations. The U.S. and Britain are both on the Security Council. The U.S. and Britain are both founding members of the UN and NATO. Trump has the ability to say alliances are not in themselves a moral value by which a nation should conduct its affairs, but rather alliances should directly serve the concrete interests of the nation, rooted in the desire to preserve its people and their immediacy, not the abstract interest of specially interested parties. That is what Trump can say. Trump can say that I am going to fight for the good of Americans and no one else, and I'm going to revise the nature of our relationships. I'm not saying that we should end the special relationship between the UK and the US, but I am saying that we have to view alliances not as moral values, because the moment you say an alliance is a moral value is the moment you impose a hierarchy upon the people of your country where that alliance may outrank their desires and needs, because that value system is totally different from what should be integral to the nation. Trump has the ability to be revolutionary here, and I hope that he does it. And we as conservatives, again, must articulate the case. Another thing, we could potentially see the restoration of self-governance to the world. we could potentially see the restoration of American republicanism to the world as well. If Trump takes on the administrative managerial bureaucracy, which has been in power for over 120 plus years, and is based on a set of court rulings and laws that have been used to create this unaccountable fourth branch of government. Not only that, but they have also made this branch of government unaccountable to the executive, despite the fact that the administrative state is an outgrowth of the executive branch. You can't make it make sense. It's very odd, isn't it? Trump has the ability to come in and not only fire people, which he has promised to do, but come in and use his bully pulpit to say there are certain agencies that ought not to exist. And as president, I do not intend to utilize these agencies. And I need Congress to help me shut them down, because some of these agencies are authorized by law, like the FBI, so on and so forth. Trump has the ability to come in and completely take a claw hammer to all of these different agencies, and by doing so, restore self-governance to the country. Because a country, America without self-governance is not America. It is something entirely different. Deportations. Now, this is a very thorny issue, but it shouldn't be. Conservatives are going to have to talk about the morality of deportations. We're going to have to discuss, because it's actually a very, very big debate within moral philosophy. Are deportations moral? And a lot of Catholic philosophers, for example, say no, they're not. We have to make the argument that the nation itself, much like a person, has the right to self-preservation. And part of preserving a nation is not just responding to threats that are firing rockets at you or trying to invade your homelands or trying to hack your systems. Part of preserving the nation is by ensuring the makeup of your country, if it is going to be changed in any way, shape, or form, are changed through a procedure that allows you as the nation to decide how the change is going to happen. Not changed in a manner that is just going to be chaotic and let loose all kinds of things into the nation. We're going to have to talk about this in a humane way. We're going to talk about this in a way that makes sense, because I think we have the winning argument here, but it's a very emotionally fraught issue for people. Another thing we're going to have to deal with during this Trump administration is MAGA, Make America Healthy Again. So the key with this, very simply, my friends, is that for decades we've had a bevy of bad science, a bevy of horrible institutional recommendations about health. We've had so many bad things going on that has shaped the American public's perception of health. We've had this concept of public health, which has given rise to people who use their quote-unquote expertise to bureaucratize and tyrannize people by holding their expertise over the considerations of morality and ethics when it relates to conducting policy relating to health. And MAGA, I think, is perhaps going to be the biggest corrective to this sort of institutional overreach from the health industry. But we're going to have a bevy of propaganda again, the pharmaceutical industry, which is deeply tied with Congress. We're going to have medical organizations that have been in bed with the pharmaceutical industry, that have created certain things, created certain papers and recommendations in coordination with those industries and with interest within those industries to shape the perceptions of health in America. They are going to be at full force. So we have to talk about, for example, the importance of self-care, the importance of fitness, the importance of both mental fitness and physical fitness, the importance of eating good, the importance of doing all these things. It may seem small, but again, we're not going to make America healthy again at all if we don't have a clear message on what being healthy and what constituting yourself healthily actually means. And lastly, we're going to be dealing with cultural leftism. The idea of trans children, for example, DEI, all of these different things that continue to rear their ugly head. We're going to be dealing with cultural leftism. I will say this. Conservatives have, I think, gotten ahead of this issue a lot over the past few years by going very hard against the medical industry for legitimizing the idea of a trans child, by exposing the failures and pitfalls of DEI, and so on and so forth. But we need to talk about these issues not in terms of a critique, but more so in terms of the alternative. What is the alternative to DEI? What is the alternative to this sort of abstract idea of childhood that allows children to be used as political and social pawns for those who have wicked ideologies? What is the alternative to all of this kind of stuff? The alternative, and this is where I think the big debate's going to happen. there's been this shift on the right between classical liberalism and more like traditionalist communitarianism. And the shift, I think, is going to be one of the definitive features of the Trump era. We're going to see which side happens to pull off. But in my humble opinion, the solution to this is not going to be returning to a different kind of authoritarianism or returning to a different kind of control system that is essentially uses power or views power in the same way left-wing ideologies may view, but uses them in a different way to achieve different ends. That's not going to actually fix or correct the problem of cultural leftism. What's going to correct the problem of cultural leftism is a few things. Number one, decoupling governments and social institutions in a way that if they're decoupled, the social institutions can no longer influence the government. That's one way. The second way, by ensuring that everyone that pushes these ideologies are fiercely corrected within the realm of ideas. Once that happens, and this is happening again more and more, especially with the ascendancy of X, but once this continues to happen, more people will be waking up to the ridiculousness of some of these ideas. And most important, I cannot overstate this, the university system and the public education system must be drastically either reformed or revised. I think personally there should be no public funding for universities whatsoever. And if there is no public funding for universities, that will force them to cut the fat that's within their educational budgets, including the fat that promotes certain ideologies that are destructive to society and that push cultural leftism, and it will force them to prioritize hard skills that are marketable. That is, I think, perhaps the best way to stem the tide of cultural leftism. None of these things involve dictating what ideas should be taught or believed. All these things simply involve, in two cases, reining back the levers of power from being a promotional vehicle for bad ideas, and therefore causing those ideas to be subject to the same constraints as every other idea, and then, in the case of discussions, fiercely critiquing those ideas when they no longer have power to back them up. If you have an idea and there's a law backing it up, it's going to be much harder to fix it in its impacts than if the idea is simply one idea amongst many others that are not especially preferenced by the monopoly of power. So these are the issues I think that we're going to talk about and deal with as the conservative movement matures under Donald Trump. But I believe that if we manage to do what I'm talking about in this video, if we manage to actually fruitfully address all of these issues, we're going to have an American Renaissance, unlike what we have seen before. But only if we articulate a positive agenda, as I have in this video, to address these issues, and only if we abandon the culture of antagonism that would do nothing more than continue to erode our society and rip its foundations apart. The Founding Fathers fought. They fought fiercely. They had some insults. They didn't like each other, but they ultimately came together because they had the same kind of ethos. And their ethos was they believed in a self-governing political and social experiment, and they believed enough in the virtue of man that he could make his own decisions and apply his creative will in a way that would not only help him flourish, but also help his friends, his family, and his society flourish. I still have that old vision. I still cling to the old principles. Many of you may call me foolish for doing so, but I won't apologize because they work, and they can continue to work if we put our minds to it and we decide to help conserve them. Are you with me? I hope so. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can to get this video out there. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remain morally convicted, and please stay pensive.